The massive ships appeared in Earth's sky without warning. They blotted out the sun over major cities, their dark metal hulls stretching for miles. People stood in the streets, pointing at the sky with shaking hands. News reporters stumbled over their words as they tried to describe what everyone could see, but nobody could believe. Commander Vextai watched the planet below from his command ship. Earth looked like any other primitive world he had visited. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds. The creatures living there had just discovered how to split atoms and barely managed to leave their own atmosphere. They were nothing special. The hegemony of Seda had been collecting tribute from worlds like this for 50,000 years. It was simple business. Take the young ones who showed promise. Train them. Use them. The weak species always gave up their children to save themselves from destruction. Vextai pressed a button on his control panel. His voice reached every human communication device on the planet at once. People of Earth, I am Commander Vextai of the hegemony of Seda. We rule 400 star systems across this galaxy. Your world will now provide tribute to our empire. He paused, letting the words sink in. He had given this speech on dozens of worlds. You will surrender your young, ages 8 through 16. We require 100,000 of your best specimens. Those with high intelligence, those with physical strength, those who adapt quickly to new situations. In the White House, President Martinez dropped his coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but nobody noticed. Defense Secretary Williams grabbed the emergency phone, but who could they call? What army could fight ships this large? You have 24 hours to gather them, Vextai continued. Refuse, and we will take them anyway. Then we will take 10 times as many. Resist, and we will reduce your cities to ash. This is not a negotiation. This is an order. The transmission ended. Silence fell across the world for exactly seconds. Then the screaming began. Parents clutched their children tighter. Teachers looked at their students with horror. Coaches stared at their young athletes, knowing they would be perfect targets. In schools for gifted children, administrators began making terrible lists. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat in her laboratory at MIT, staring at equations on her whiteboard. Her 12-year-old daughter Maria was at school, probably solving math problems that confused college students. Maria was exactly what the aliens wanted. Smart beyond her years. Quick to learn new things. Strong-willed and curious. Elena's hand shook as she reached for her phone. The world's leaders held emergency meetings through the night. Military generals presented plans that sounded brave but meant nothing. Nuclear weapons were useless against ships protected by energy shields. Fighter jets were toys compared to alien technology. Some governments tried to negotiate. They offered money, resources, anything except the children. Vextai did not even respond. He had heard it all before on other worlds. Dr. Sarah Chen, a NASA pilot, held her twin sons as they slept. Bobby and Tommy were 14, star athletes who had already been accepted to advanced science programs. They were exactly what the aliens described. The best specimens. Mom, Bobby whispered in the dark. Are the aliens really going to take us? Sarah wanted to lie, but her boys were too smart. I don't know, sweetie. But if they do, remember that Dad and I love you. Remember that we will never stop looking for you. The testing began at sunrise. Alien ships landed in every major city. Strange machines scanned children, measuring their intelligence, reflexes, and genetic potential. The process was cold and efficient. Parents were pushed back by energy barriers that felt like walls of electricity. Maria Vasquez scored perfectly on every test. Her young mind grasped complex patterns that the alien machines presented. She solved puzzles in seconds that should have taken hours. When the scanner measured her brain activity, it glowed brighter than any other child's. Alina watched from behind the barrier, tears streaming down her face. Her daughter looked so small next to the tall, gray aliens with their black eyes and emotionless faces. Around the world, 100,000 children were selected. The aliens showed no mercy. They took the teenage chess champion from Russia, the young Olympic hopeful from Kenya, the child prodigy who played violin like an angel, the farm boy who could fix any machine, the girl who spoke 7 languages. They took children who had never known fear and children who had overcome everything. Rich kids and poor kids. Children of every color from every nation. The only thing they shared was potential. The loading process took 6 hours. Parents screamed and fought against the energy barriers. Some tried to climb them and were knocked unconscious by electric shocks. Police officers and soldiers wept as they watched, knowing their weapons were useless. Bobby and Tommy Chun held hands as they walked up the ramp into the alien ship. They looked back once at their parents, trying to be brave. Sarah pressed her face against the barrier, mouthing "I love you" over and over. As the ships prepared to leave, something unexpected happened. Every child on every ship began to sing. It started with a girl from London who hummed her mother's lullaby. Then Maria Vasquez joined in with a song her grandmother had taught her. Soon, children from around the world were singing together in dozens of languages. The aliens did not understand what was happening. Singing served no practical purpose. It was inefficient. But the sound carried across the energy barriers to the parents below. For a moment, the terrible silence broke. Parents sang back to their children, creating a bridge of music between the ships and the ground. Love poured back and forth in melodies that needed no translation. Then the ships rose into the sky. The singing faded as they climbed higher, but it did not stop completely. Even as Earth became a tiny blue dot below them, the children continued to sing softly in the dark cargo holds. Commander Vex Tai frowned at his instruments. The human young were displaying unusual behavior. Most species became quiet and submissive after collection. These creatures seemed to be bonding with each other instead of accepting their fate. He made a note in his report, but dismissed it as unimportant. They were just children, after all. Once the conditioning began, they would forget their primitive world and learn to serve the hegemony properly. Behind him, hidden in the ship's walls, quantum signals pulsed silently. The children's songs had been more than music. They had been code, passed down through lullabies and playground rhymes that carried mathematical patterns their mothers and fathers had taught them. The collection was complete. The ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying their precious cargo toward the heart of the Empire. On Earth, 100,000 families stared at empty beds and began to plan. The silence lasted exactly 1 week. Then Elena Vasquez did something that changed everything. She stood up in a town hall meeting in Boston and spoke 3 simple words. "I want them back." The room was full of broken parents who had spent 7 days crying, drinking, or staring at empty bedrooms. When Elena spoke, they all looked up. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with something that made everyone listen. "My daughter Maria is 12 years old," Elena said. "She likes strawberry ice cream and terrible jokes. She builds robots in our garage and dreams of visiting other planets. She is not a specimen. She is not tribute. She is my child, and I want her back." A man in the back row stood up. It was Dr. James Okafor, whose son had been taken from Lagos. "How?" he asked. "Their ships are like moving cities. Their weapons turn matter into light. What can we do?" Elena walked to the front of the room. She picked up a marker and drew a simple equation on a whiteboard. "We can do what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds. We can be smarter than our enemies." Dr. Sarah Chun flew in from Houston the next day. She had been a test pilot before joining NASA, used to solving problems that seemed impossible. Now she sat in Elena's laboratory, looking at wreckage from alien technology. They left pieces behind, Elena explained, pointing to small metal fragments. Every time their ships landed, tiny bits broke off, probably considered junk. But these fragments contained their technology. Sarah picked up one piece. It was no bigger than her thumb, but it felt warm and seemed to hum with energy. Can we understand it? We have to, Alana said. Maria sent me a message before they left. Sarah's eyes widened. How? Elena showed her a notebook. Pages and pages of her daughter's handwriting, but mixed in with normal homework were strange symbols and numbers. She was always good at hiding things from me. Turns out she was hiding more than I thought. The symbols were not random drawings. They were mathematical formulas disguised as doodles in the margins of school assignments. Maria had been preparing for something like this her whole life, and she had left her mother a roadmap dot within days. Parents from around the world began arriving at Elena's lab. Not just any parents. Scientists, engineers, doctors, computer programmers, soldiers, pilots. They came from every country, speaking different languages, but sharing the same desperate purpose. Dr. Yuki Tanaka brought quantum computing expertise from Tokyo. Her 8-year-old son had been taken while visiting his grandfather in Kyoto, Colonel David. Reyes brought military strategy knowledge from Mexico City. His daughter Rosa was 15, a gifted athlete who spoke 4 languages. They called themselves the Prometheus Coalition. But they were really just angry parents with useful skills. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected place. Dr. Amara Osei, a psychologist from Ghana whose twin daughters had been taken, was studying the alien communication patterns when she noticed something strange. Their language is purely logical, she explained to the group. No emotion, no creativity. They communicate facts and orders, nothing else. Elena looked up from a circuit she was trying to decode. What does that mean? It means they might not understand what our children are really doing, Amara said. When Maria left you those hidden messages, when the children sang together on the ships, they were using something the aliens cannot process properly. Elena felt her heart race. Emotion. Not just emotion, love, hope, the need to stay connected to family. The aliens see it as inefficient behavior that will be corrected through training. Dr. Chum leaned forward. But what if it cannot be corrected? What if being human is not something you can train out of people? The team worked 18 hours a day, sleeping in the lab when exhaustion finally took them. They built devices from alien fragments and human technology. Most attempts failed, producing only sparks and smoke. But each failure taught them something new. The breakthrough came at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday. Elena was working alone, trying to understand how alien quantum processors handled information. When suddenly her computer screen filled with symbols. It was Maria's handwriting, transmitted across impossible distances through quantum entanglement. Mom, can you see this? Are you there? Please tell me you got my message. Elena's hand shook as she typed back. The connection was weak and kept cutting out, but it was real. Maria! Baby, I'm here. Are you okay? Are the other children safe? We're alive. Mom, they're trying to change us. Make us forget Earth, but we're remembering together. Bobby Chun taught us to make memory maps. Rosa Rios showed us how to hide thoughts during their brain scans. The alien machines can't understand why we keep helping each other instead of competing. Elena wiped away tears as she typed. Are they hurting you? They're trying to, but not how you think. They don't hit us or starve us. They just try to make us stop being human. But Mom, I figured something out. Their technology works by controlling quantum patterns in the brain. But human brains are different. We can resist in ways they never expected. The connection started to fade, but Maria's last message came through clearly. Don't try to rescue us, Mom. We're going to rescue ourselves. And we're not coming home alone. Elena stared at the screen long after the connection died. Around her, alien technology hummed and glowed, slowly revealing its secrets to human minds that refused to give up. The next day, the Prometheus Coalition received funding from an unexpected source. Every government on Earth putting aside decades of conflict to support a single mission. Not to surrender to the aliens, but to bring their children home. Dr. Chun stood before a room full of scientists, soldiers, and world leaders. We have 18 months of preliminary research, she announced. We understand basic alien technology. We know how to hide our ships from their sensors. We know where they took our children. President Martinez leaned forward. What do you need? Everything, Sarah replied. Every resource, every brilliant mind, every parent who refuses to accept that their child is gone forever. Elena looked around the room at faces filled with determination instead of despair. The aliens made a mistake, she said quietly. They think we're just another primitive species that will roll over and accept our losses. They don't understand that humans don't abandon family, ever. Dr. Tanaka pulled up star charts on the main screen. According to the quantum signals we've been tracking, the children are being held on 12 different worlds throughout the hegemony. Training facilities, work camps, breeding programs. The room fell silent at those last words. Colonel Reyes stood up, his face hard as steel. Then we go to all 12 worlds. We bring back every human child. And we make sure this never happens to another species. Elena nodded, thinking about Maria's last message. Her daughter was not just surviving. She was planning something. All the children were planning something. Our kids are not victims, Elena said. They never were. They're young humans who got kidnapped by aliens who have no idea what that means. She looked out the window at the night sky, knowing that somewhere up there, her daughter was teaching alien technology to work in ways its creators never intended. The hegemony took our children because they wanted to use human potential for their own purposes, Elena continued. They're about to learn that human potential cannot be contained or controlled. It can only be unleashed. The Prometheus Coalition began to build, not just weapons or ships, but something the galaxy had never seen before. A civilization united by love, for their young and willing to cross any distance to bring them home. 18 months after the taking, Captain Sarah Chun floated in the darkness of space, watching the fortress world of Kithara through her ship's view screen. The planet looked like a metal ball covered in lights, with massive structures reaching up from its surface like the spikes on a sea urchin. Her ship was small, no bigger than a school bus, and completely invisible to alien sensors. The Prometheus Coalition had built it using principles that the hegemony had never imagined. Where alien technology relied on brute force and overwhelming power, human engineering used cleverness and efficiency. Go 7. This is Ghost Command. Elena's voice crackled through the quantum communicator. What do you see? Sarah adjusted her instruments. Massive orbital platforms. Hundreds of ships. This place is built like a fortress, but also like a factory. Elena, there are so many energy signatures down there. They're not just holding our kids. They're holding thousands of beings from dozens of species. Any sign of Bobby and Tommy? Sarah's throat tightened. Her twin sons were somewhere on that heavily defended world, if they were still alive. Not yet, but I'm going in. The stealth ship slipped past patrol vessels that could have destroyed it with a single shot, if they had been able to see it. Sarah had learned to fly before she could drive, had tested experimental aircraft that killed other pilots. But nothing had prepared her for this. She was not just a pilot now. She was a mother flying into hell to find her children. The ship touched down in an abandoned section of the planet's surface, hidden among massive industrial towers that stretched up into the clouds. Sarah put on her disguise, a hooded robe like the ones worn by the slave species that maintained the facilities. Her skin had been darkened, and her features changed by careful surgery. To a casual observer, she looked like any other worker, but she was not alone. All across hegemony space, other parents were landing their own invisible ships on other worlds. The Prometheus Coalition had learned where each group of children had been taken, and they were moving in coordinated teams. Sarah made her way through corridors filled with beings she had never seen before. Tall, thin creatures with 4 arms. Short, stocky beings covered in fur. Aquatic species in mobile tanks. All of them moved with the same defeated shuffle, eyes down, spirits broken. Except for one small group. Sarah froze when she saw them. Human children, wearing the same gray uniforms as everyone else, but walking differently. They moved with purpose, talking quietly to other young beings from different species. And leading them was a girl Sarah recognized. Maria Vasquez was taller than she had been 18 months ago, but her eyes still sparked with intelligence. She was showing a young alien how to reprogram a maintenance robot, her hands moving quickly as she explained concepts that should have been beyond either of their understanding. Sarah wanted to run to her, to gather all the human children and escape immediately. But she forced herself to stay hidden and watch. What she saw amazed her. The human children were not just surviving. They were teaching. Maria helped a frightened creature from a bird-like species understand basic mathematics. A boy Sarah recognized as a chess champion from Brazil was organizing work schedules that were somehow more efficient than the alien systems. Twin girls from Australia were leading a group of young beings in what looked like a game, but was actually a lesson in problem solving. And everywhere they went, something was changing. The defeated shuffle was disappearing. Other young beings were starting to stand straighter, look up, ask questions. Sarah activated her recording device and followed at a distance. She watched Maria lead a group into what appeared to be a repair facility. Broken machines lined the walls, too damaged for normal fixes. See, the problem is not the hardware, Maria was explaining to a diverse group of young beings. The problem is that their designers only think in straight lines. But we can think in curves. She picked up a tool and began working on a device that looked like a cross between a computer and a musical instrument. My mom taught me that every problem has a pattern. Sometimes you have to look sideways to see it. Within minutes, the machine began to hum with life. But more importantly, the young beings around Maria began to understand that they could fix things that their masters considered permanently broken. Sarah moved closer, trying to get a better view, when someone touched her shoulder. "You are not supposed to be in this section," a voice said behind her. Sarah turned to see a tall alien guard, its black eyes reflecting no emotion. Her heart hammered as she prepared to fight or run. "I am sorry," she said in the broken trade language she had learned. "I became lost." The guard stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, it looked past her toward the children. "The young humans are strange," it said slowly. "They make the others different." Sarah held her breath. Before they came, the work groups were efficient but predictable. The guard continued. "Now productivity is increasing, but the young ones ask questions. They suggest improvements. The guard paused, as if searching for words. "They make me think of things I had forgotten." The guard looked back at Sarah. "You should return to your assigned area. But if you happen to see the human called Maria, tell her that Guard Unit 7742 appreciates the new maintenance schedule she created. They are better." The guard walked away, leaving Sarah stunned. She had just witnessed something impossible. An emotionless alien soldier had expressed gratitude, had shown curiosity, had remembered something it thought it had forgotten. Sarah spent 3 more days on Cathara, documenting what she saw. The human children had not just resisted alien conditioning. They had somehow begun to undo 50,000 years of conditioning in other species. She watched Bobby and Tommy working with a group of young beings to solve engineering problems. Her sons looked older, more serious, but they still laughed together. They still protected each other. And now they were protecting others too. When it was time to leave, Sarah managed to get close enough to Bobby to slip him a small device. "Mom?" he whispered, recognizing her despite her disguise. "I love you," she whispered back. "Both of you. We're coming to get you." Bobby shook his head slightly. "Mom, we can't leave yet. Look around you." Sarah looked. She saw hundreds of young beings from dozens of species, all showing signs of hope that had not existed before humans arrived. She saw alien guards beginning to question orders they had followed without thought for millennia. She saw a revolution being born in the minds of children who refused to be broken. "We're not prisoners anymore," Bobby continued. "We're teachers, and our lessons are spreading." Sarah activated her communicator as she prepared to leave the planet. "Ghost Command, this is Ghost 7. Mission complete, but the situation is not what we expected." Elena's voice came back immediately. "What do you mean?" "The children don't need rescue," Sarah said, watching Cathara shrink behind her as her ship climbed toward space. "They need backup. They're not trying to escape the hegemony. They're trying to change it." Back on Earth, Elena stared at the reports coming in from all 12 worlds where human children were being held. The story was the same everywhere. The children were not just surviving captivity. They were somehow infecting an entire galactic empire with the most dangerous idea in the universe, the idea that things could be better. Maria's voice came through the quantum communicator that night, stronger than ever before. "Mom, are you getting the data packets we're sending?" "Yes, baby." "But Maria, what are you doing out there?" "We're doing what you taught us to do," Maria replied. "We're solving problems. And the biggest problem in this galaxy is that nobody remembers what it feels like to be free. But we're helping them remember." Elena looked at the star charts on her wall, marking the locations where human children were held. Red dots that had once represented prisons were slowly turning green as reports came in of unprecedented changes in alien behavior patterns. "How long do you need?" Elena asked. "Not long now," Maria said. "Mom, when we come home, we're not coming alone. Is Earth ready for refugees?" Elena smiled as she looked around the laboratory where humans have learned to work together like never before. "We'll be ready." Above them, the night sky held new meaning. Somewhere out there, their children were not just surviving an alien empire. They were teaching it to dream. Commander Vestai stood in the central command chamber of the hegemony capital ship, staring at reports that made no sense. For 50,000 years, the empire had run like a perfect machine. Orders were given. Orders were followed. Systems functioned exactly as designed. Now, nothing worked the way it should. "Sir," his aide approached nervously. "Another report from the Cathara facility." Vestai took the datapad, already knowing it would contain more impossible information. "What now?" "Production efficiency has increased by 43%, but the workers are creating things not in their programming. Art, sir, music, stories. And the guards are participating instead of stopping them." Vestai scrolled through images that hurt his mind to look at. Colorful paintings on gray walls. Sculptures made from recycled materials. Alien beings dancing together in patterns that serve no practical purpose. Worst of all, he could see hegemony soldiers in the background, watching with what could only be described as curiosity. "What about the mining world of Zarian?" "Similar reports, sir. The human children have somehow organized the different slave species into cooperative units. They're extracting more valuable minerals than ever before, but they're also singing while they work. The songs appear to contain coded information that spreads to other facilities. Vextai pressed his fingers to his temples. The concept of slaves choosing to work better while simultaneously planning something behind their masters' backs was beyond his understanding. In the hegemony, you either obeyed completely or were destroyed. There was no middle ground. And the training facility on Zephyr Prime? His aide hesitated. That situation is concerning, sir. The human children completed all conditioning protocols successfully. But instead of becoming obedient workers, they appear to be teaching the conditioning techniques to other species in reverse. What does that mean? They're showing the alien youth how to remember what they were before the hegemony took them, sir. Species that were conquered centuries ago are suddenly recalling their original cultures, languages, and belief systems. Vextai threw the datapad across the room. It shattered against the metal wall, but the pieces still glowed with more impossible reports. Entire sectors reporting unprecedented changes in behavior. Guard units requesting permission to ask questions. Workers suggesting improvements to systems that have been unchanged for millennia. Get me a direct connection to the human called Maria Vasquez, he ordered. Sir, that's not standard protocol. Nothing about this situation is standard. Vextai roared. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he could not identify. Later, he would learn that humans called it frustration. The communication screen flickered to life, showing a small human sitting in what appeared to be a workshop. Maria Vasquez was now 14, taller than when they had taken her from Earth. But her eyes still held the same bright intelligence that had made her a perfect specimen. Hello, Commander Vextai, she said calmly. I've been expecting you to call. What have you done to my empire? He demanded. Maria looked genuinely puzzled. We haven't done anything to your empire, sir. We've just been helping our friends. Friends? The concept was alien to him. You were taken as tribute. You were assigned work roles. The other beings are not your friends. They are fellow workers. Oh. Maria nodded as if she understood his confusion. I think there might be a translation problem here. In human languages, we have many words for different kinds of relationships. Friend is someone you choose to care about. Someone you help because you want to, not because you have to. That is inefficient. Actually, it's incredibly efficient, Maria replied, pulling up holographic displays around her. When beings work together because they choose to, productivity increases dramatically. When they share knowledge freely, innovation accelerates. When they trust each other, they can accomplish things that seemed impossible. Vextai stared at the displays. They showed production reports from dozens of worlds, all with the same pattern. Increased efficiency. Decreased conflicts. Problems being solved in ways that had never been tried before. But they are slaves, he said weakly. We're slaves, Maria corrected gently. Now they're just people who haven't realized they can leave yet. The connection cut out as alarms began blaring throughout the command ship. Vextai's aide rushed back into the room. Sir, we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Simultaneous work stoppages on 47 worlds. The beings are not rioting or destroying property. They're just stopping, standing in groups and singing. Vextai pulled up the security feeds from multiple planets. The images were all the same. Millions of beings from hundreds of species, standing together in the open areas of factories, mines, and training facilities. Human children stood at the center of each group, but they were not giving orders. They were simply singing, and everyone else was singing with them. What are they singing? Vextai asked. His aide ran the audio through translation protocols. It appears to be lullabies, sir. Children's songs from dozens of different worlds. But the mathematical patterns embedded in the melodies are incredibly complex. It's almost like they're using music to transmit data. On screen after screen, Vextai watched as his perfectly ordered empire filled with the sound of voices that had been silent for generations. Species that had forgotten their own names were remembering songs their ancestors had sung before the hegemony conquered them. "Sir," another officer approached. "We're detecting massive quantum fluctuations in the neural control networks. The frequency patterns match the music being broadcast from the surface worlds." Vextai felt something cold spreading through his chest. "What does that mean?" "It means the human children found a way to use our own control systems against us, sir. Every time the songs play, they're transmitting liberation codes to the suppression implants in the workers' brains." The screens around the command center suddenly filled with Maria's face again. But now she wasn't alone. Bobby and Tommy Chun stood beside her, along with hundreds of other human children and thousands of young beings from species Vextai had never bothered to learn the names of. "Commander Vextai," Maria said, her voice carrying across every communication system in the Empire. "We need to talk." "This is impossible," Vextai whispered. "No one can access our primary communication networks without authorization codes." Maria smiled sadly. "Sir, we've been living inside your technology for 2 years. We know it better than you do. Your authorization codes are based on mathematical patterns that never change because your people never think to change them. Humans are really good at spotting patterns, especially when we're motivated. Around the galaxy, on 400 worlds spanning 50,000 years of conquest, beings who had never known freedom began to remember what it felt like to choose. "What do you want?" Vextai asked. "We want to go home," Maria said simply. "All of us. Every being you've ever taken from their families. Every species you've enslaved. We want them to have the chance to return to their homeworlds and rebuild what was lost. That would mean the end of the hegemony." "Yes, sir, it would." Vextai looked around his command center at officers who were staring at the screens with expressions he had never seen before: wonder, hope, fear of change, but also excitement about possibilities they had never imagined. "And if I refuse?" Maria's expression became serious. "Then, in approximately 6 hours, every neural suppression device in your empire will stop working permanently. Your workers will remember who they were before you took them. Your soldiers will remember that they once had families and dreams. Your administrators will realize that they've been serving a system that took away everything they once loved." She paused, letting that sink in. "But Commander, we don't want to destroy the hegemony through violence. We want to transform it into something better. Something where beings work together because they choose to, not because they're forced to." For the first time in his life, Vextai understood what the humans meant when they talked about hope. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. "How?" he asked quietly. Maria smiled, and for a moment she looked like exactly what she was: a 14-year-old girl who missed her mother and wanted to go home. "The same way humans have always solved impossible problems, sir. Together." The liberation signal went out at exactly midnight. Earth time. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the Prometheus Coalition Command Center, watching as quantum transmissions reached across the galaxy simultaneously. On 400 worlds, the songs that human children had been teaching for months suddenly became something more. The musical patterns activated hidden codes in every neural suppression device the hegemony had ever created. And then, for the first time in 50,000 years, billions of beings remembered who they were. Elena's hands shook as reports flooded in from monitoring stations around the world. "It's working," she whispered. "Maria, it's actually working." Through the quantum communicator, her daughter's voice came back tired but triumphant. "Mom, you should see this. They're not angry. I thought they would be angry after remembering everything that was taken from them. But they're just free. On the screens around the command center, images appeared from across the galaxy. Beings of every shape and size stepping out of factories and training facilities, not as escaped slaves, but as people remembering their names. A blue-skinned species began building structures that looked like flowers. Creatures with multiple arms were creating music with instruments they crafted from mining equipment. Bird-like beings took to the skies in formations that spelled out words and languages that had been dead for centuries. Commander Vex Tai appeared on the main screen, speaking from the Hegemony capital ship. His usually emotionless face showed something Elena had never seen before in an alien expression, uncertainty mixed with wonder. "Dr. Vasquez," he said formally, "the transition is proceeding exactly as your daughter predicted. There has been no violence, no destruction of infrastructure. The beings are organizing themselves." Elena looked at readings from across the Empire. "What about your forces, Commander? Are they maintaining order?" "That is the remarkable thing," Vex Tai replied. "My soldiers are not maintaining order. They are participating in creating it. For the first time in their lives, they are choosing what to do instead of simply following commands." Behind him, Elena could see alien officers working alongside beings who had been slaves just hours before. They were building something together, their movements coordinated but not controlled. "Commander," Elena said carefully, "what happens now?" "Now we face a problem no hegemony leader has ever confronted," Vex Tai admitted. "How do you govern beings who are free to leave at any time?" Maria's voice cut in from across space. "You don't govern them at all, sir. You work with them." 6 months later, the first Liberation fleet reached Earth. Elena stood on the platform at Edwards Air Force Base, watching as ships filled the sky. Not the dark, threatening vessels that had taken her daughter away, but bright craft of every imaginable design, built by species working together instead of under compulsion. The lead ship touched down gently, and Elena held her breath as the ramp lowered. Maria stepped out first, taller now, her hair longer, her face showing the maturity of someone who had learned to solve impossible problems. But when she saw her mother, she was still a 15-year-old girl who had missed bedtime stories and homemade cookies. Elena ran to her daughter, and for a moment, the watching crowds fell silent as a mother and daughter embraced after 2.5 years apart. "I missed you so much," Elena whispered, holding Maria tight. "I missed you too, Mom, but look who we brought home." Elena looked up to see streams of children emerging from the ships. Not just human children, but young beings from dozens of species. They moved together in the mixed groups they had formed during captivity. But now their movement was joyful instead of fearful. Bobby and Tommy Chun ran to Sarah, who swept them both into a hug that lifted them off the ground. Dr. Tanaka wept as her son showed her a device he had built using principles from 12 different alien technologies. Colonel Reyes watched in amazement as his daughter Rosa translated between species that had never been able to communicate before, but the children were not alone. From the ships came adults of every species the hegemony had ever conquered. They were not refugees fleeing oppression. They were partners in building something new. A tall, crystalline being approached Elena, moving with graceful steps that left small musical notes in the air. "Dr. Vasquez," it said in perfect English. "I am Harmony of Distant Stars. I was an engineer before the hegemony took my homeworld 3,000 years ago. Your daughter helped me remember how to build things that sing." Elena looked around at the impossible gathering. "What happens now?" "Now we go home," Maria said simply. "All of us. But first we help each other rebuild what was lost." Over the following year, Earth became the coordinating center for the largest reconstruction project in galactic history. Ships arrived daily carrying beings, returning to worlds they had not seen for generations. But they were not returning empty-handed. The hegemony's vast, Technological resources were being repurposed for creation instead of control. Planets that had been strip-mined were being restored to garden worlds. Species that had been scattered across the galaxy were reuniting with family members they thought were dead. Commander Vextai established a small office in Geneva, working with human leaders to coordinate the peaceful dissolution of his empire. Elena was surprised to find that she actually liked him once he learned to show emotion. He was efficient, organized, and completely dedicated to helping billions of beings find their way home. "I do not understand how this works," he admitted during one planning session. "In the hegemony, we control through fear and overwhelming force. But your system produces better results through cooperation? Welcome to humanity's greatest discovery," Elena replied. "When people work together because they want to, they can accomplish anything." Maria spent her days traveling between Earth and dozens of worlds, carrying messages and technical specifications for reconstruction projects. She had become an unofficial ambassador between species, fluent in languages that had been dead for millennia and capable of explaining complex concepts to beings with completely different ways of thinking. But every night, she came home to her mother's house and helped make dinner, just like any other teenager. "Mom," she said one evening as they cooked together, "do you ever think about what would have happened if the hegemony had never taken us?" Elena considered the question as she watched news reports showing the first interspecies university being built on a world that had been a prison just months before. "I think humanity would have eventually reached the stars on our own," she said. "But it might have taken us centuries to learn what you figured out in 2 years. What's that? That the universe is not a place where the strong rule the weak. It's a place where different kinds of strength can work together to build something none of us could create alone." Maria smiled as she set the table for dinner, automatically adding an extra place for whatever friend from whatever species might be stopping by that evening. The aliens thought they were collecting our children to use our potential for their purposes. And instead, we used their empire to teach the galaxy how to dream. Outside their window, ships from a dozen different worlds moved across the evening sky, carrying families home, bringing supplies to reconstruction projects, and connecting beings who had been isolated for millennia. The night sky that had once held terror now sparkled with hope. Elena looked at her daughter, who was now helping other species rebuild their worlds while still finding time to be a teenager who complained about homework and left dirty dishes in the sink. "I'm proud of you," she said. Quietly, "I'm proud of us," Maria replied. "All of us. Humans, aliens, everyone who remembered that families don't abandon each other. Ever." In the years that followed, historians would mark the liberation as the beginning of the Galactic Cooperative, a voluntary alliance of species working together to heal the damage of 50,000 years of conquest. But the children who had made it possible simply called it going home. They had left Earth as kidnapped victims and returned as bridges between worlds, carrying with them the most powerful force in the universe, the unbreakable bond between parents and children, and the endless human capacity to see potential in others and refuse to give up hope. The galaxy had taken humanity's young, expecting to break them. Instead, they had learned what it meant to be human.